Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is ARYA Putra IRAWAN and I'm from English Education Class D. Now I will explain about teaching by principle and an informed approach. This chapter have two contents. There are an enlightened electric approach and communicative language teaching, including learner-centered instruction, cooperative and collaborative learning, interactive learning, whole language education, content-based instruction, and task-based instruction. The first is an informed approach. We had learned to be cautiously eclectic in making enlightened choice teaching practice at the end of the 1980s. The second, language teaching and designing effective tasks, were informed by approach. The last, today we found that language learners have the main and eclectic blend of tasks. The next is an enlightened electric approach. It should be clear from the foregoing that as enlightened electric teacher, however, sometimes some teachers having no experience about teaching, so that cannot have their own approach to language. On the other hand, they apply by pedagogical process such as one, which side of continuum of possibilities would generally to lean toward. The second, why would you learn then way, and most important. And the last, what contextual variables might influence a change away from your general inclination. The next is communicative language teaching. All of these theoretical interests underline what we can best describe as CLT. For the sake of simplicity and directness, we offer the following 6 interconnected characteristics as a description of CLT. 1. Classroom goals are focus and grammatical discourse. 2. Language technique. 3. Fluent and accuracy. 4. Using language productively and receptively. 5. Students are given opportunities to focus on their own learning process. 6. The role of teacher is that of facilitator and guide. The next is communicative language teaching. 1. The 6 characteristics underscore some major departure from earlier approach in some way. Those departures were a long stretch of history. 2. In other ways, those departures were radical structurally or grammatically sequenced. Curricula were a mainstay of language teaching for centuries. 3. CLT suggests grammatical structure might better be subsumed under various functional categories. 4. It is important to note, however, that fluency should never be encouraged at the expense of clear, unambiguous, direct communication. 5. Much more spontaneity is present in communicative classroom. Students are encouraged to deal with an unrehearsed situation under the guidance but not control of the teacher. 6. And finally, the teacher's facilitative role in CLT is the product to decade or more slowly recognizing the importance of the learner initiative in the classroom. 7. Some of characteristics of CLT make it difficult for a non-native speaking teacher who is not very proficient in the second language to teach effectively. 8. Dialogue drills, rehearse exercise, and discussion in the first language of grammatical rule are much simpler for some non-native speaking teachers to contend with. And the last, technology can aid such teacher. Moreover, in the last decade or so, we have seen a marked increase in English teacher proficiency levels around the world. The next is communicative language teaching. Indeed, you can some assurance latch onto the CLT level and like the member of a club, after that you believe in CLT and be allowed to step inside the stake. But as with every issue in our field, there are caveats. 1. Beware of giving lip service to principle of CLT, but not truly grounding your teaching technique in such principle. 2. Avoid overdoing certain CLT feature, engaging in real-life, authentic language in the classroom to the total exclusion of any potential helpful control exercise, grammatical pointers, and other analytical device. 3. Remember that there are numerous interpretations of CLT because it is a casual term. It is tempting to figure that everyone agree on its definition. As long you are aware of many possible versions of CLT, it remains a term that can continue to capture current language teaching approach. Next is a comparison of the audiolingual method and communicative language teaching. The first, audiolingual, is a method for foreign language teaching which emphasizes the teaching of listening and speaking before reading and writing. The second, communicative language teaching, is a language teaching by approach based on the linguistic theory of communicative competence. The next is learner-centered instruction. There are two kinds of instructional models. The first, teacher-centered, and the second, learner-centered instruction. The learner-centered instruction include 1. Techniques that focus and account for learners' need, style, or goals. 2. Techniques that give some control to the student, group work of strategy training, for example. 3. Curricula that include the conclusion and input our student and that do not perceive objectives in advance. 4. Techniques that allow for student creativity and innovation. And the last, techniques that enhance a student's sense of competence and self-worth. The next is cooperative and collaborative learning. Cooperative and collaborative learning is a teaching and learning strategy where students are grouped together to scrutinize a particular assignment or topic to maximize their own and each other learning. Cooperative learning is where teams of students with various abilities and skills work together on different activities to learn about a subject. And collaborative learning is commonly illustrated when groups of students work together to search for understanding, meaning, or solution, or to create an artifact or product of their learning. The next is interactive learning. Interactive learning is a pedagogical approach that incorporates social networking and urban computing into course design and delivery. Interactive learning has evolved out of the hyper-growth in the use of digital technology and virtual communication, particularly by students. The next is whole language education. 1. And science part of the wholeness of language includes that interrelationship of the four skills. There are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We are compelled to attend consistently to the integration of two or more these skills in our classroom. 2. Whole language is a perspective anchored in a vision of an equitable, democratic, diverse society, because we use language to construct meaning and to construct reality. Teaching a language enables learners to understand a system of social practice that both constrain and liberate. The next is content-based instruction. Content-based instruction, or CBI, according to Brinton, Snow, and Westche in 1989, is the integration of content learning with language teaching aims. More specifically, it refers to the concurrent study of language and subject matter with the form and sequence of language presentation dictated by content material. Next is task-based instruction. While there is a good deal of variation among experts or how to describe or define tasks by Peter Skehans, concept of task seems to capture the essential. 1. Meaning is primary. 2. There is some sort of relationship to comparable real-world activities. 3. There is some communication problem to solve. 4. Task completion has some priority. 5. The assessment of the task is in terms of outcome. 6. A task is really a special from technique and task may be synonymous. 7. Task-based instruction is not a new method. And the last, task-based instruction is a perspective within a CLT. That's all from me, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.